there, senior leader, and welcome to the Talent Sherpa podcast, where senior leaders come to rethink how human capital really works. I'm your host, Jackson Lynch, and today we are going to talk about one of the most persistent blind spots in executive leadership, treating finance and talent like they're running on separate tracks. But before we get started, let me ask you for a favor. If you appreciate this podcast, please take a moment to subscribe on your favorite platform, leave us a 5-star review, and share it with a colleague. Those are the steps that we need you to take to get the podcast growing. And if you'd like me to join your HR team to talk about what you hear here on the podcast, please drop me a line. I'm excited about growing our function. So let's get into it. Now, you have probably lived this. The CFO walks into the boardroom with a slide deck full of margin pressures and operating costs and cash flow forecasts. And then HR follows right after with a deck on engagement results, training completion, time to fill, and maybe even a people priorities roadmap. Now, both are true. Both even sound good in isolation, but they are not the same conversation. And when finance and talent aren't talking to each other, neither is the business. It's like trying to climb a mountain with one boot untied. You will absolutely make some progress, but the slip is coming. And the higher you go, the harder it is you're going to fall. So let's talk about why this matters. It's because when talent is framed as support instead of capital, it loses weight in the boardroom. And when it loses weight in the boardroom, investments don't flow. So instead of growth bets, you get expense controls. Instead of building capacity, you get headcount freezes. The leaders who get this right treat talent as capital, just like machinery, just like M&A, just like product development. They measure returns on the cost. They manage risk, and they use metrics that sit comfortably in a financial conversation. Think about revenue per employee, talent density, speed to impact, human capital ROI. Those are not HR metrics. They are business metrics that just happen to be powered by people. So here's a story. I worked with a company in hyper-growth mode. They were hiring like crazy, doubling the size of their business every 6 months. New markets, kind of knew everything. HR came to the table proud. They had engagement scores that were climbing. The diversity mix looked really healthy. Onboarding decks were polished and modern and even fit the template. Meanwhile, the CFO was sweating bullets over payroll. His question was blunt. At this burn rate, when did these hires start covering themselves? It's a really good question, but there was silence. There was no speed productivity metric or even break-even analysis, just we're building culture. 18 months later, the brakes slammed. Layoffs, hiring freezes, investors furious, leaders fired. And the cost of not connecting talent to financial outcomes was very real and very expensive. Now, imagine if HR had walked in with, here's our ramp curve. New hires hit break even at 90 days. Every 1,000 hires adds X dollars in revenue within 2 quarters. Like, that's not fluff. That's capital allocation. That's a return on investment. And the CFO would have backed it all day long. Now, here's a different company. It's a different cycle. This time it was a downturn. Revenues shrinking, margins were being squeezed. The CFO slide was neat and tidy, cost-cutting opportunities. Top of the list, you guessed it, headcount. Now, most CHROs would have started with people impact, morale, culture, the human side. And all those are valid. And by the way, the amount of time it takes to rebuild trust after a layoff is really daunting. But the burning question in that boardroom had nothing to do with anything this CHRO talked about. But this CHRO did something different. She walked in with productivity numbers. She didn't just show revenue per employee. She sliced it in by performance tier. They identified that they had a concentration risk, which meant they could protect the top quartile because they were producing double the output of the bottom quartile. So her proposal was not across the board, but cut very selectively. Protect the top talent, maybe even lock them in, redeploy them faster. And the CEO and the board approved, not because it sounded compassionate, although it was, but because it made mathematical sense. And when the downturn ended, the company came out leaner, stronger, and more profitable. That is talent treated as capital, not as a cost. So let me give you one more. This is a positive one. A company that I worked for had a CFO and a CHRO who had decided to stop presenting separately and start presenting together. So instead of parallel decks, they built a joint scorecard. They walked into every staff meeting and board meeting with one page on one slide. Revenue per employee, EBITDA per head, variance to plan, and on the other, speed, productivity, retention of top performers, and things like that. Here's the genius. It doesn't even matter what was on there, but they tied every people metric directly to a financial outcome. For example, the top quartile retention has been 94%. That stability is worth X dollars in avoided replacement cost and productivity preservation. Like, when do you have those conversations? When you do, the result is clear. The board didn't see HR as asking for investment. They saw HR and finance as co-owners of value creation. And when that company had to decide whether to fund a new product line or a new leadership development programs, both were debated on equal terms. That's what alignment looks like. And it's rare, but it doesn't have to be. Here's the unlock. When HR shows up with that kind of framing, the CFO stops seeing you as a person that is asking for money and starts seeing you as a partner in capital allocation. And capital allocation is the sacred boardroom ground. It's how companies decide where to build factories, which ones to build, which acquisitions to make, which bets to double down on. But if you think about it, every people decision, every hiring, promotion, or exit decision belongs in that very same category because each one either creates value or it burns it. And when you show it in those terms, you don't have to ask for a voice in the debate. You have earned it. You will, in fact, be invited to help solve the business's hardest problems. Okay, this is all fine and good, but you're probably wondering, how do you actually put these into practice? Here's what I'd tell you. First, you got to align your metrics. Stop reporting people numbers in isolation. Retention doesn't matter unless you specify which retention. Keep your top quartile and report that. Training hours don't matter. Time to fill doesn't matter. Speed to impact does. Second, you got to speak finance. Revenue per employee, return on human capital, variance to plan. You don't need to be a CPA, but you do need to translate your world into theirs. Third, you got to build a joint scorecard. One set of numbers where talent and finance both show up. If you and the CFO are carrying the same scorecard into the boardroom, into the decision meetings, you are no longer on parallel tracks. And fourth, and this is really, really sensitive, you cannot oversell. CFOs, CEOs, and boards, they hate rosy numbers. They cannot be defended. Come in conservative. Make sure the math is bulletproof. Leave the fairy dust at home. Now, let's be honest. Finance people often think that HR speaks in motivational posters, and human capital thinks that finance only speaks in decimals and acronyms. Both are a little bit right, but here's the kicker. You're actually talking about the same thing, the ROI of human decisions. You just need a translator, and that translator is shared metrics. So let's tie up both boots before we climb. Or in other words, hey guys, here's the summary. Finance and talent cannot live on parallel tracks. If your people strategy isn't aligned with your financial strategy, your growth plan has a blind spot. The leaders who win are the ones who treat talent like capital. They measure returns, they manage risk, and they use real business metrics. And that is how human capital earns its voice in the boardroom debate. Thank you so much for tuning into the Talent Sherpa podcast, where senior leaders come to rethink how human capital really works. A quick shout out to one of our favorite listeners. Hi, Carlos. Thank you for being a part of the Talent Sherpa community. Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, like I mentioned before, please hit that like button, subscribe, leave us a review on your favorite platform. We're ubiquitous. We're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever. And if you're a CHRO wondering where to start your AI journey, don't forget to check out Propulsion AI. That's at www.getpropulsion.ai. That's transforming how smart companies turn HR insights into powerful outcomes. Now, if you are an emerging or brand new CHRO ready to accelerate your impact, head on over to mytalentsherpa.com. We've designed resources specifically to help you navigate, elevate, and deliver results from day one. Until next time, keep raising the bar, keep tying both boots, and keep on climbing.